Now, alarming new figures show that 1 in every 10 children in Australia is suffering from some form of an anxiety disorder. So how can you tell if your child is stressed and when is it dangerous to their health? Deputy Director of the Macquarie University Centre for Emotional Health, Professor Jenny Hudson, joins us this morning. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Deb.
Now, childhood, it's meant to be carefree without a worry in the world. What have kids got to be so concerned about, sending them stress levels to this type of degree?
Yeah, it is surprising, isn't it? We wouldn't expect children to worry like this, like we expect adults to worry about, but it is actually the most common mental disorder that children experience, anxiety.
And what are the common concerns that they have?
Well, it does range. Children will differ in terms of the things that they worry about. Some children worry about separating from their parents, so they may worry that something bad's going to happen to them when they separate. Or they may have more anxiety around kind of a social nature, so they may worry about what other people think of them and worry about presenting in class or answering a question in class, those sorts of things. Or they also may have more general worry, which is kind of worry about everyday activities or worry about everyday things like getting into trouble at school or forgetting their school books or worrying about what's happening in the world, whether there's going to be a tsunami or kind of everyday kind of worries that they might have.
A lot of that is just normal behaviour, isn't it? Anxiousness and nervousness. It's all part of growing up and learning your boundaries. But when do you know when it's moved from just normal behaviour to some sort of a disorder?
Yeah, it's a good question because anxiety and fear are really normal emotions that everybody experiences and that's just part of life. But for some people they experience it more often and more intensely, and so it then may have an impact on their life. So when it starts to have an impact, so a child might start avoiding situations like have trouble going to school or separating at preschool, or they may just not participate in class activities because of their worry. And that's when it starts to impact, that's when we say it's a problem.
And it can impact on their physical and their mental health, can't it?
Yeah, that's right. It can have massive impacts on their sleep and also just the stomach aches. Children with anxiety often report a lot of stomach aches during the day and headaches and muscle aches and those sorts of things. So it does have an impact on physical health as well.
And how much are we as parents to blame for this? Because we all know about helicopter parenting and projecting our own fears on children. Are we as parents overly stressing our children through our own behaviours?
Yeah, that's a good question because we do know that anxiety does run in families, that if you have an anxious child, the parent's much more likely to be anxious as well. And that does have an impact. We know that if parents do encourage their children to avoid situations or to protect them or help them more, which is kind of a natural response. You know, when you have a more inhibited, a more anxious, shy child, I think the natural response for parents is to want to help them more. But I think by doing that, it doesn't let the child actually face the situations on their own and learn to cope. So I do think that does have an impact if you're rushing in and helping too much. Whereas I think the other more positive strategy is to kind of encourage them to face situations and kind of in really gradual ways encourage them to be brave rather than to kind of avoid situations that they're nervous about.
And just finally, what should you do as a parent if you are concerned that your child might be showing some of these very stressful or anxious behavioural traits?
Well, I think it is really important to seek help because we know in the long term that anxiety does have an impact on your mental health later on. If you have anxiety as a child, you're much more likely to have mental health problems later in life as well, so important to seek help. We have a clinic at Macquarie University Centre for Emotional Health. We have a specialised clinic where you can seek help. We're actually running a new trial at the moment, testing out our skills-based strategies for kids and seeing if actually adding medication to that can enhance our outcomes for children, which is a really exciting new study. So people can find out about our program on the web. And also you can seek help from a GP if you think your child's anxiety is having an impact. Then go and speak to your GP. Or the Australian Psychological Society also has a great website called Find a Psychologist, which you can find a psychologist in your local area for help with anxiety.
Plenty of options for help if you need it. Professor,
Yes.
Thank you so much for
It's a
coming in
pleasure.
this morning. Cam.